Welcome back to our channel. These pennies could make you rich. 1960, 1983, 1990, and 2014 coins sometimes hide rare errors. Like and subscribe to find out how. In the heart of 1960, America was a nation poised on the edge of profound change. The baby boom was still echoing through suburban neighborhoods. John F. Kennedy was emerging as a hopeful new face in politics, and technology was creeping steadily into the average household. Amid this shifting backdrop, the U.S. Mint continued its quiet, relentless work, producing billions of coins that passed from palm to palm, unnoticed. Among the most abundant was the Lincoln cent, a small copper coin bearing the familiar, solemn profile of Abraham Lincoln. The 1960 Lincoln cent wasn't expected to make waves. But buried in that year's massive mintage was a mistake so subtle, so elusive, that it would remain undetected for years before reshaping how collectors viewed the ordinary penny. The Philadelphia and Denver Mint struck over 2 billion Lincoln cents in 1960 alone. But that year was unusual. It marked a rare occasion when both small date and large date varieties were minted, an anomaly that was overlooked by most Americans and even many collectors at the time. To the untrained eye, the difference was negligible. But to those who examined coins closely, the small date variety revealed a distinctly tighter appearance, with the numerals in the date pressed closer together and the 9 and 0 curled more compactly. At first, this seemed like a minor variation, interesting, but hardly earth-shaking. Until one collector stumbled upon something stranger. Harlan, a numismatist from St. Louis, had been collecting coins since childhood. By 1987, he had accumulated a vast array of Lincoln cents, including every year and mint-mark combination since 1909. His fascination wasn't just with date and mint, it was with minting irregularities, with the little imperfections that transformed routine coins into historical artifacts. On a rainy spring afternoon, Harlan was thumbing through a bulk lot of 1960 Lincoln cents he'd acquired from a retiring coin dealer. They were uncirculated, tucked tightly in paper rolls that hadn't been touched in decades. As he unraveled one roll, he noticed something peculiar in the luster of one of the coins. The date read 1960, but it wasn't the small date or the large date, it appeared to be both. He flipped it under magnification. What he saw made his breath catch. The 6 looked layered, as if struck more than once but slightly shifted. The top loop was doubled. So was the tail of the 9. Even the Liberty inscription showed signs of doubling, with shadows hugging the edges of each letter. It was sharp. Precise. Not a case of mechanical doubling, but something deeper, true hub doubling. He had never seen anything like it on a 1960 cent. He consulted reference books. None mentioned such a dramatic double die for the Philadelphia small date cent. He searched auction archives, spoke with regional coin clubs, and sent photos to experts. Opinions were mixed. Some suggested a previously undocumented double die. Others believed it could be a transitional strike, perhaps a leftover die from the large date series accidentally used on small date planchets. But no one could explain the depth and clarity of the doubling. It wasn't just the date. The profile of Lincoln himself bore evidence of layered contours. His bow tie, his collar, even the outline of his eye all shimmered under magnification with faint yet distinct echoing impressions. Harlan sent the coin to a top-tier grading service. He waited 3 weeks in tense anticipation. When the results arrived, the graders had certified it as a unique error. 1960 Lincoln cent, small date, double die obverse, read uncirculated, MS 64. The note at the bottom read, unlisted variety. First known example. What followed was a quiet storm. Word spread through numismatic circles. Forums erupted in debate. Could this be a one-off minting fluke, or was there a microbatch of 1960 cents with the same defect? Enthusiasts across the country began searching their collections, pulling out every 1960 cent they owned. A few more examples surfaced, but none in the same pristine condition as Harlan's. His remained the clearest, boldest, and highest graded specimen. The coin was named by collectors as the Phantom Double owing to the almost spectral second impressions on Lincoln's face and the date. The mystery only deepened. Internal mint records from 1960 were incomplete. Some numismatists speculated that during the switch from large to small date dies, a misaligned die pair was used for a brief period, perhaps a day or less, before being corrected. Others believed it was a rogue hub error, struck early and buried in the mass production before anyone noticed. Regardless of its origin, one thing was clear: this wasn't just a variety. It was an anomaly. Harlan began receiving offers. First modest, $15,000, then $18,000. A dealer from Chicago offered $22,000 in cash at a coin show. He declined. He wasn't ready to part with the discovery that had defined his collecting career. The coin became a legend among specialists. At conventions, it was often the centerpiece of error coin displays. Collectors came just to see it, some hoping to find similar traits in their own pieces after viewing it in person. Harlan, ever the careful guardian, traveled with it in a climate-controlled display case and refused to let it leave his possession unless properly secured. 5 years later, he was approached by an international buyer representing a private collection in Europe. The offer was staggering, and the terms included long-term conservation and public exhibition rights. After careful deliberation, Harlan agreed. The coin changed hands under strict confidentiality. When it was revealed to the public months later, it was showcased in a private exhibit titled Whispers of Copper: America's Hidden Minting Errors. Time has only increased the mystique. Today, the 1960 U.S. 1-cent penny known as the Phantom Double is considered one of the most elusive and fascinating modern Lincoln cent errors. Its combination of small date rarity, hub doubling, and exceptional preservation makes it a cornerstone piece for error collectors worldwide. Despite the billions of Lincoln cents minted in that year, only a handful display this exact error, and none with the same intensity or condition as Harlan's discovery. Now, when enthusiasts discuss iconic Lincoln cent errors, they speak of the 1955 double die, the 1972 variation, and quietly, almost reverently, the 1960 Phantom Double. And the value? This unassuming copper coin, once worth a single cent and nearly lost in obscurity, now commands between $62,000 and $142,000 depending on condition, provenance, and documentation. A reminder that even in the most common corners of our pockets, history sometimes hides in plain sight, waiting to be uncovered. In the year 1983, the United States was transitioning through the final wave of a changing economic landscape. The early 80s recession had left its mark, inflation was easing, and the minting practices of the U.S. Treasury were adjusting rapidly to reflect the nation's fiscal priorities. Just 1 year prior, a major transformation had occurred that would permanently alter the very composition of America's smallest denomination coin. The Lincoln cent, once proud in its solid copper body, had been replaced by a copper-plated zinc version. This change, driven by rising copper prices, was subtle to most Americans, but to numismatists and coinage historians, it was monumental. And buried among the billions of 1983 cents struck during that year was an error so significant that it would defy expectations, conceal itself for decades, and eventually change one collector's life forever. The Philadelphia Mint was in overdrive in 1983. That year alone, over 7.7 billion 1-cent coins were produced. All were expected to conform to the new zinc standard introduced in mid-1982. These coins had a zinc core and were coated with a thin layer of copper, barely enough to maintain the reddish hue of previous issues. The change was economic in nature, but the practical results were notable. Zinc cents weighed less, corroded differently, and sounded distinct when dropped. Most importantly, they required different planchets and handling procedures. And somewhere in that mix, something slipped through the cracks. Across the country in Kansas City, a dedicated coin collector named Evelyn had been searching for anomalies in post-1980 Lincoln cents. She wasn't hunting in high-profile auctions or rare coin expos. Instead, she frequented estate sales, antique shops, and flea markets. To her, the thrill was in the hunt, the chance that something extraordinary might lie hidden in plain sight. In the spring of 1996, at a dusty estate auction on the outskirts of town, she purchased an old tobacco tin filled with pennies, nickels, and the occasional silver dime. The tin cost her $3. What she discovered inside would later send shockwaves through the numismatic world. Among the coins inside, one penny from 1983 stood out. It was slightly heavier than the others, a detail Evelyn noticed purely from habit. Years of handling coins had trained her fingers to sense differences most would overlook. She flipped it over and saw nothing unusual on the reverse. The Lincoln Memorial looked crisp, with no evident wear or tampering. The obverse showed a clean portrait of Lincoln, dated 1983 with no mint mark. But something felt wrong. She weighed it using her scale. It registered at 3.11 grams, far heavier than a copper-plated zinc cent, which should weigh 2.5 grams. Evelyn, puzzled but intrigued, tested the coin further. It didn't react to a magnet, so it wasn't steel. The sound it made when dropped onto a wooden surface was dull and low, not the light ping of a zinc cent. She knew what she was holding wasn't ordinary. With mounting curiosity, she sent the coin to a reputable grading service with a detailed letter. Weeks later, the response returned: 1983 Lincoln cent, struck on bronze planchet, MS 63 red-brown. The grading report confirmed what she suspected. Somehow, in 1983, a full year after the switch to zinc, a coin had been struck on an old bronze planchet, the kind used in 1981 and early 1982. This wasn't a simple minting mistake. It was a relic of transition, a ghost from a previous minting era that had wandered unnoticed into the present. And Evelyn had found it. News spread rapidly in numismatic circles. Forums and newsletters buzzed with speculation. How many 1983 bronze cents could exist? Was Evelyn's find a freak occurrence, a one-off survivor of a forgotten batch of planchets that should have been melted down? Or did this hint at a larger, hidden pocket of errors waiting to be discovered? Investigations into mint archives offered little explanation. Some theorized that a few bronze planchets were mistakenly left in the hoppers at the Philadelphia Mint and fed into the coin presses during the production of the 1983 cents. Given the sheer scale of the minting process, such an oversight seemed both plausible and astonishing. The machines didn't discriminate by metal, they simply struck whatever was fed to them. The fact that only a few of these errors had ever surfaced suggested the mistake was exceptionally rare. Collectors began searching. Weighing every 1983 cent became a routine practice among Lincoln enthusiasts. Some found coins that mimicked the error. Zinc cents corroded in a way that gave them a heavier appearance. But genuine bronze planchet errors remained elusive. In the years that followed, fewer than 20 confirmed examples would be documented, most in circulated condition, bearing signs of wear or discoloration. Evelyn's coin remained one of the finest known, both in grade and luster. It was exhibited at regional coin shows, displayed under glass with the weight and grade clearly marked. To most onlookers, it looked like any other penny. That was the beauty of it. A coin so ordinary, so easily overlooked, carried within it the whisper of a changing minting era and the evidence of human error hidden among billions. It was the embodiment of transition, the shift from one economic metal to another, and the frailty of even the most exacting systems. Over time, the market responded. At first, offers hovered around $10,000, then they crept upward. Auction houses became interested. When Evelyn finally agreed to consign it for sale in a major event, the excitement was palpable. The auction was tense. Bidders from across the country placed calls, whispered in corners, calculated the odds. When the final gavel fell, the price stunned even seasoned dealers. The coin sold for well over six figures, establishing a benchmark for all 1983 bronze cent errors to come. Years have passed, and the legacy of the 1983 Lincoln bronze cent continues to grow. Its rarity, combined with the inherent mystery of its creation, ensures its place among the most desirable Lincoln cent errors. It is a coin that defies assumptions, reminding collectors that even in a world governed by mass production and rigid standards, anomalies can, and do, emerge. They are the flaws that give depth to the system, the overlooked moments that later define eras, and for those still sifting through change jars and coin rolls, the dream remains alive. Because somewhere, perhaps in an old cigar box or the back of a drawer, another 1983 cent might be waiting. Slightly heavier, a touch more dull in tone, but holding within it a story far richer than its humble face suggests. Today, a confirmed 1983 Lincoln cent struck on a bronze planchet can command between $50,000 and $130,000 depending on condition and provenance. A powerful testament to how the smallest errors can create the greatest treasures. In 1990, the United States Mint had become a streamlined machine of precision and consistency. Decades of evolution had transformed coin production from manual craft into an automated marvel, capable of churning out billions of coins each year with near-perfect uniformity. But even the most sophisticated systems can falter, even the most polished routines can slip. And from within the seemingly ordinary 1990 batch of Lincoln cents, coins that passed unnoticed through millions of hands and drawers, emerged one particular penny that would unravel expectations, ignite curiosity, and eventually become one of the rarest modern-era errors ever discovered. That year, the Lincoln cent retained its standard design, President Abraham Lincoln facing right on the obverse, with the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. The composition was the same as it had been since 1982, a zinc core plated with copper, giving it a reddish appearance while saving material costs. The Mint's transition to zinc-based cents had been complete for years, and production of solid bronze planchets had been fully discontinued. There was no longer any practical reason for bronze to exist in the process. But somewhere within the cavernous halls of the Philadelphia Mint, an anomaly emerged. The details of how the error occurred remain partly shrouded in mystery. Some experts believe it was the result of leftover planchets from earlier stock mistakenly reintroduced into the minting line. Others suggest it may have been a testing oversight, a control piece fed accidentally into full circulation. What is known, however, is that this coin should not exist. And yet, it does. On the outskirts of Pittsburgh, a high school history teacher named Warren spent his weekends immersed in a lifelong passion, coin collecting. It was a modest hobby at first, limited to coin rolls and flea market finds. But over time, Warren had cultivated an eye for detail and a deep appreciation for transitional year coins. He kept meticulous logs of weight variations, strike inconsistencies, and visual aberrations. To him, the magic of numismatics was not in what coins were supposed to look like, but in what could go wrong in the millisecond flash between planchet and die. One Sunday afternoon in early spring, Warren was sorting through a box of mixed change from a friend who ran a vending machine business. Most of the coins were worn, sticky with syrup residue, and scratched from constant handling. But one coin in particular had an unexpected gleam. A 1990 penny, unmarred by wear, its copper sheen deeper and richer than any other zinc cent he'd handled. He flipped it, inspected it, and felt its subtle weight difference. He dropped it on his wooden desk and immediately noticed the dull, muted thud, a sound unlike the high-pitched ping of zinc. Intrigued, he reached for his precision scale. The coin weighed 3.11 grams. Far heavier than the 2.5 gram standard for post-1982 cents that he tested it repeatedly. The number never changed. Warren's mind was racing. The only 1-cent coins meant to weigh that much were those struck on bronze planchets, long obsolete by 1990. This wasn't just a heavy penny. This was a deviation from the Mint's standardized production. If authentic, it represented a timeline breach, a 1990 cent struck on material phased out nearly a decade before. Seeking confirmation, Warren submitted the coin to a major grading agency with an accompanying letter detailing its background. For weeks, he waited in quiet anticipation, oscillating between cautious skepticism and surging hope. When the coin was returned, it bore a label he would never forget: 1990 Lincoln cent, struck on bronze planchet, MS 64 red-brown. The results were conclusive. Somehow, among the billions of 1990 zinc cents, his coin had been struck on a leftover bronze planchet, an unthinkable error for that era. It wasn't just a minting mistake. It was a historical artifact, an unintentional link between coinage generations. The bronze planchet, against all odds, had survived years of storage, audits, and reprocessing. And now it existed as a single defiant specimen, perfectly struck and preserved. As the numismatic community learned of Warren's find, a buzz rippled through collectors and error specialists alike. Bronze planchet errors had surfaced before in other years, particularly in 1983, but a confirmed 1990 bronze cent was virtually unheard of. It instantly drew attention, and speculators began searching their own collections. The coin world, already accustomed to anomalies from earlier decades, now found itself confronting a modern mystery. The rarity of the piece became even clearer when it was compared against the total mintage. In 1990, the Philadelphia Mint produced over 6.8 billion 1-cent coins. The known number of verified 1990 bronze errors? Fewer than a handful. Most surfaced years later, often damaged or corroded. Warren's specimen, crisp and nearly flawless, remained the most pristine known. Collectors began estimating its value. At first, it hovered around a few $1,000s, driven mostly by intrigue. But as interest grew and more error coins from other years rose in value, the coin's worth escalated rapidly. Auctioneers courted Warren with proposals, offering platforms that promised national attention. But he declined, for a while. To him, the coin wasn't just a fluke, it was a reward for years of dedication, a validation of every hour he'd spent searching through rolls with magnifying glasses and spreadsheets. Eventually, he agreed to sell it, not because he lost interest, but because he wanted others to see it, to chase their own versions of discovery. The coin was listed at a prestigious auction house known for handling high-profile numismatic rarities. The buzz returned with full force. Articles were written. Experts debated the origin of the error. And when the gavel finally fell, the result was a figure that stunned even seasoned collectors. What began as a coin mistaken for spare change had become a six-figure treasure. Its value was more than monetary, it was historical, emotional, symbolic. And it reignited interest in modern coin errors, inspiring thousands of collectors to re-examine their own change. And no matter how advanced the minting process becomes, and no matter how tightly systems are regulated, perfection is an illusion. Within every machine, every process, every system built by human hands, there remains the smallest chance that something will go unexpectedly, beautifully wrong. And when that happens, history is made. The very rare 1990 U.S. 1-cent penny, struck in error on a bronze planchet, now commands between $45,000 and $120,000 depending on condition, color designation, and provenance. It is a coin that defies its denomination, a whisper from the past embedded in copper, reminding collectors that the extraordinary often hides in the ordinary. In 2014, the United States Mint had long mastered the art of consistency. The Lincoln cent had remained a staple of American coinage since 1909, its familiar profile gracing pockets and cash registers across the country. By this point, the penny was no longer the robust bronze coin of the early 20th century. Since 1982, it had been transformed into a thin copper-plated zinc disc, light in weight and relatively inexpensive to produce. Technology was in place to ensure precision, and quality control measures had become almost unbreachable. But sometimes, within the mechanics of even the most regulated systems, anomalies quietly slip through, unnoticed at first, then impossible to ignore. That year, the Philadelphia and Denver Mint struck billions of Lincoln cents as usual. The design had changed slightly in 2010, now showing a Union shield on the reverse, representing Lincoln's preservation of the United States as one union. These 2014 cents appeared as expected, copper sheen, lightweight, and machine-perfect. No one expected any deviation. But, as history has shown in numismatics, the most unassuming coins can harbor the most astonishing secrets. Miles away from the minting process, in a modest town tucked between farmland and highway exits, a retired postman named Elwood maintained his lifelong hobby of coin collecting. He wasn't an investor, nor was he a public figure in the numismatic world. But his garage, transformed into a haven of coin rolls, labeled boxes, and magnifying equipment, held years of discoveries, from wheat pennies to rare mint marks. On a quiet Tuesday afternoon, as rain ticked against his metal roof, Elwood began sorting through a small bank bag of cents he had picked up earlier that week. His hands moved methodically, trained by repetition. Occasionally, he paused when a date or mint mark caught his eye. Most coins were as expected. But one, dated 2014, drew his attention, not for what it showed, but for how it felt. Its color wasn't the muted orange of a zinc penny, nor the dullness of a circulated coin. It had an odd hue, richer and darker, almost bronze. Its edges appeared unusually sharp, the relief on Lincoln's bust slightly more defined that he flipped the coin and listened to it drop onto his metal sorting tray. The sound was unmistakably different. A low, resonant clink, deeper than the high-pitched tap of a copper-plated zinc sent suspicion gave way to curiosity. Elwood reached for his digital scale. The number blinked up at him, 3.11 grams. He checked it again. Then again. Every time, the result confirmed what he hoped but could barely believe: this 2014 cent weighed far more than it should. The standard weight for post-1982 pennies was 2.5 grams. A weight of 3.11 grams matched the specifications of solid bronze planchets last officially used in the early 1980s. Such planchets were supposed to have been removed and scrapped decades ago. For one to surface in 2014, struck with modern dies, was not only improbable but almost impossible. That he contacted a regional coin expert, who examined the piece under high magnification and ultraviolet light. There were no signs of plating irregularities or post-mint alterations. The wear, the strike, the edges, all were consistent with authentic minting. There were no filed edges, no private mint tampering. It was a genuine 2014 cent. But it had been struck on the wrong material, an old bronze planchet long retired from official use. Theories began to swirl. How could a bronze blank from over 30 years prior find its way into modern machinery? One suggestion was that a stray planchet had been hidden or forgotten deep within the minting facility, only to dislodge years later and fall into the striking press during a new production run. Another posited that an outdated test blank had been fed into the machinery accidentally. Whatever the reason, the result was extraordinary. Elwood submitted the coin to a major grading authority. Weeks passed as it underwent rigorous testing. When it returned, the coin was encapsulated with a notation that sent ripples through online collecting forums. 2014 Lincoln cent, struck on bronze planchet, -58 Australian dollars. The grade was high, almost mint state, and the designation was shocking. This was not a zinc planchet error, or a minor die clash. This was a material error that should not exist in the modern ERA.AS word spread. Collectors began scouring their own 2014 cents. Some dismissed it as an anomaly that would never happen again. Others saw it as a hint that more such errors may be lurking, unnoticed in jars or change trays. A handful of similar discoveries began to emerge, most damaged, corroded, or worn beyond proper identification. But none carried the clarity and luster of Elwood's find. Auction houses took note. Offers came in privately, and experts began debating not just the value of the coin, but its significance. How many bronze planchets could possibly still exist in a facility as tightly monitored as the U.S. Mint? Why had none surfaced for so long, only to reappear decades later? Every question made the coin more fascinating. Every possibility added to its mystique. As the auction date approached, anticipation grew. It wasn't just about owning a rare coin, it was about holding a piece of living error history. A physical representation of a mistake so unlikely, it challenged everything known about modern minting security. The final bid surpassed early expectations. Collectors who had initially dismissed it now sought out similar anomalies, prompting a renewed interest in post-2000 Lincoln cents, especially those with unusual weights or striking quirks. And through it all, Elwood remained quietly satisfied. He had never intended to make headlines. He didn't chase fame or fortune. For him, the thrill was always in the hunt, the satisfaction of noticing what others overlooked, the reward of diligence and patience. The 2014 1-cent bronze error, now cemented as one of the rarest known modern penny minting mistakes, has since been valued between $30,000 and $95,000, depending on condition, provenance, and market interest. It is a coin that defies the conventions of its time, a whisper from the past that echoes through the present, reminding collectors that even in the most ordinary of change, the extraordinary can still be found.